people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
There's undisputed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you got Fundora. It's underneath. That's undisputed. So them two fights, I don't know who we need to talk to. I don't know. Is this my camera? I don't know if this is Turkey we need to talk to, if it's match room, if it's Eddie, if it's Oscar, whoever we need to talk to. We got a champion right here, and I call her champ.
I can talk to Niece. I'm actually good friends with her. So
look, hey Niece, can we make that fight? Can it just be a call?
Payday.
Hey,
do it.
Look, you know, so...
Was unbeaten up-and-comer in the super flyweight division, Virginia Fuchs, expressing her desire to face either Shernika Johnson or Gabby Fundora, both undisputed champions at their respective weights. Who would she have to talk to? Well, she'd have to talk to Golden Boy Promotions to get Gabby in the ring, but not only that, she'd have to move down in weight from superfly down to fly, and she's 37 years old, though still very good. Doesn't have a lot of time. She's currently WBC interim champion at super flyweight, the mandatory challenger for reigning champion Ashley Gonzalez, but the WBC still hasn't ordered that fight. So she's thinking about moving down for Gabby and moving up for Shernika. Who would she have to talk to get Shernika in the ring? She'd have to talk to Jake Paul, Nikisa Badarian. She'd have to talk to MVP. Who's she tagged? In a recent social media post saying, "Hey Jake Paul, I'm WBC interim super flyweight champion, undefeated at 4-0, former captain of the Olympic boxing team, and I'm going for undisputed. You've built MVP into the future of women's boxing. Sign me, and we'll get all the belts." What can Jake Paul do for a fighter with only 4 professional bouts at 37 years old? Well, he did just sign Ebony Bridges, who's older than Virginia. Ebony Bridges is 38. She's got a couple of losses. He also signed Shannon Courtenay, former champion Shannon Courtenay, who I don't think has anywhere near as high a ceiling as Virginia Fuchs. So don't use her age against her. If you can sign Ebony and you can sign Shannon, you can sign Virginia, and I think you'll get more bang for your buck than it seems on paper. She doesn't have a lot of fights in the paid ranks, not a lot of experience, but a whole lot of ability. That's because of her amateur pedigree. It's been almost a year since her last fight. She's been boxing once a year for the last 2 years. She only boxed once in 2023 against India Smith, and she only boxed once last year against the then unbeaten Adelaida Ruiz for what was the WBC interim title. Virginia won it, but in the process of the fight, she suffered a rather nasty injury to her thumb. I think I saw the bone protruding, and it took her some time to heal. That was close to a year ago. So why should Jake Paul sign her? Well, because she's good, and if you put her in the right fights, she can win it. He already has one prized stallion at this same weight in WBA champion Jasmine Artiga. Go for 2. I understand that MVP can't hope to solve all the problems that women's boxing faces or sign every single fighter that's out there, but they could do a lot worse than sign Virginia Fuchs, who stands a decent enough chance of winning that Ashley Gonzalez fight. What you could do, make the fight, then sign the winner, then put the winner of that fight in the ring with Jasmine Artiga in a unification match. That's one way they could play it. The only obstacle, I think, is they already have so many female fighters to accommodate. Careful that you're not wearing yourself thin, trying to sign all these female fighters who you now have to schedule fights for, that if you take on another, it better be worth it. That's the caveat. They've signed so many female fighters already. Is there actually room for Virginia Fuchs in their current stable? If they try to make room, she has to make it worth their while. She has to win. And the more time that passes, the harder it is to come back. She's 37, going on 38 years old. There are some fights against some champions that I think Virginia Fuchs, she might come out on top. But when you talk about either Shernika Johnson, who's been looking like a wrecking machine, or Gabby Fundora, who's been looking the same, I don't know that I like Virginia's chances at just 4-0 being inactive for the last 11 months. Not against them, but some of the champions at her own weight, like, say, Ashley Gonzalez, the WBC champion, or Irma Garcia, the IBF champion, or Jasmine Artiga, the WBA champion that MVP just signed. You could give Jenny Fuchs a fighting chance against them. So maybe MVP might pick her up on that predication, that she could be another major player at super flyweight if they get her the opportunities. We'll see. In men's junior middleweight news, per FTTV Boxing, Keith Thurman shoots a shot at Terence Crawford. Just in case Canelo pulls out of the September 13th mega fight, Keith Thurman has thrown his name into the mix to face Terence Bud Crawford in Vegas. Thurman, who returned with a KO win after a 3-year layoff, said he DM'd Crawford directly, "If anything happens to Canelo, I'm here, just let me know." Crawford's response, "We good, pimp, we got this." The Canelo versus Crawford clash is being billed as one of the biggest fights in boxing history, part of the Riyadh season Netflix card. But with this kind of backup offer, would you want to see Bud versus Thurman if Canelo can't make it? Or should Thurman get his own spotlight on the undercard? Several different points to address here. The first being, will Canelo versus Crawford end up being one of the biggest fights in boxing history? The stage is set for it. They got the right platform to make it happen. Netflix is tantamount to a terrestrial network these days. It's available in millions, and I mean millions, upon millions of homes. Over 300 million around the world that are going to get to see it as part of their existing subscription. So that's a lot of people. In terms of scale, it could end up being one of the most watched fights in the history of boxing. That's not hyperbole. That might check out. Do we want to see Keith Thurman versus Terence Crawford if something happens to Canelo? Not really. This was a fight that I would have liked to have seen in the welterweight division back when both Terence and Keith were at welterweight. Here today, it's Colt product. Who's interested in that? Keith just moved up to junior middle, and Terence is on his way to super middle. There's no real reason for them to fight aside from Keith's money woes. That if all of a sudden he's warmed up to the idea of fighting Terence Crawford, it's for the money. He didn't used to want to fight him before, but all of a sudden he does now, and it's because of the money that's behind him, the money that's behind Terence Crawford. More money than anybody at junior middle. Sebastian Fundora, his PBC stablemate, is right there. Why isn't Keith doing more and saying more to get a fight with him? Because it don't pay no money, and the PBC ain't got no money. Keith Thurman, after 3 years away from the sport, did not come back to fight for belts or fight for legacy. He likely came back because the well is drying up and he needs more money. You know that the PBC can't really help him out because his last fight technically wasn't even a PBC show. It was a no-limit promotion promoted in Australia that required Keith to travel. The PBC, at this point in the juncture, don't have anything for him to do. What do you mean? They got Sebastian Fundora. You think that Keith Thurman wants to fight Sebastian Fundora for peanuts on a dollar at some shoebox? Where? At the Armory in Minneapolis? Oddly enough, I don't even think the PBC still do shows at the Armory like they used to. Keith's not really back to fight for belts. He's back to fight for money because he needs it. You can tell, and there's nothing wrong with that. They are prize fighters first, after all. They are prize fighters, but there is a difference between a guy who's just back to fight for a couple of bucks and a guy who's trying to prove something, a guy who's trying to accomplish something. The guy trying to accomplish something, he's a prize fighter too. He's fighting for money too, but he's got so much ability that he's here to do more than just fight for prizes. And that's what separates them. What separates what you see from a Terence Crawford and what you've seen from a Keith Thurman, which hasn't been a whole lot. He fought Brock Jarvis very recently, and before that he was out for 3 years. After the Mario Barrios fight, coming off of a 2-year hiatus. He took 2 years off after he lost to Manny Pacquiao, and before he fought Pacquiao, he took off 2 years before that. It's gotta be something like a 7 or 8 years worth of inactivity, the last 10 years of Keith Thurman's boxing career. So believe me when I tell you that if he's back, it's not really for legacy, and it's not really for belts. It's for money. Money mostly. And that puts a very different complexion on what fights you expect Keith to take on, and why, and how he will perform. He's not going to end up fighting Terence Crawford. He missed that opportunity. That ship sailed a long time ago.
Long ago.
Finally, in men's heavyweight news, Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul probably breaks the internet, says Eddie Hearn, if that fight actually got made, but I have my doubts. In a clear sign of the times, on a night when Alexander Usyk would claim the undisputed heavyweight championship for a second time, with a knockout of Daniel Dubois at London's Wembley Stadium, Eddie Hearn could be found Saturday night in Frisco, Texas, getting sucked into the conversation about a very different kind of heavyweight extravaganza. Hearn was on hand at the Ford Center, at the Star, better known as the Dallas Cowboys headquarters and training facility, but also the setting for a matchroom card that featured Hearn fighters Jesse Bam Rodriguez and Diego Pacheco in the main and co-main attractions, respectively. And between Pacheco's clinical points win over Trevor McCumbee and the start of Rodriguez's frog boil of Fumalele Kafu, Hearn visited with reporter Chris Mannix on DAZN's broadcast to discuss the variety of subjects, including the general greatness of Usyk.
He's a great guy.
Firstly, Usyk is pound for pound number one. Unquestionable, Hearn said. As great as Terence Crawford is, and maybe Bam makes the case for number 2 tonight, Naoya Inoue, Usyk is streets ahead. Don't forget, he picked up a lot of those Cruiserweight World Championships in people's backyards on the way to undisputed. 2-time undisputed heavyweight world champion. He's beaten Anthony Joshua twice. He's beaten Tyson Fury twice. He's beaten Dubois twice. What more is there to do? With Usyk having decisively cleared out the heavyweight division of current contenders, the most compelling matchups to be made in the division now are arguably among the vanquished. And loath as Hearn was to admit it, a possible rubbernecker of a spectacle involving Anthony Joshua, the highest profile heavyweight under his banner. You've got Tyson Fury calling out Usyk pre-fight. I'm sure AJ would love Usyk, but let's be honest. Do the fans want to see those trilogies? No, they want to see AJ against Tyson Fury, but maybe with a little twist in the middle, because this circus with Jake Paul seems to be gaining momentum. Jake Paul started it. The only reason that those two names got attached in the first place is because Jake Paul got it in his head that he could start calling out Anthony Joshua, and that seems to have gained traction over time. I personally think that when Jake started calling him out, it wasn't with the intention that a fight might actually happen. He was just being an opportunist, seeing that Anthony was at a low point. After the loss to Daniel Dubois, Jake thought he could start playing with his name until talks for a fight actually started becoming serious. Under the big top would be Anthony Joshua facing Jake Paul, the YouTuber become pseudo-contender who recently trashed Joshua's chin and called out the former unified champion. Orchestrating the matchup is ringleader Turki El Sheikh, who recently appeared on The Boxing Voice and announced that Paul had accepted a proposal for the fight, offering him just a 1% purse split. Don't ask me how, don't ask me why, Hearn said with a grin. But if people want Anthony Joshua to evaporate the career of Jake Paul in one night, maybe we make it happen. Hearn said he spoke to El Sheikh shortly after the Saudi Arabian financier's meeting with Paul on the subject, and seemingly baffling even himself, claimed he's open to Joshua versus Paul. You know, obviously it'll be up to AJ and myself what AJ does, and MVP CEO Nikisa Badarian and Jake what they do, but also the power of Turki El Sheikh bringing it together, making it a mega event. We're up for it, you know? It's not a fight we targeted, it's not a fight we anticipated, but as I said, if it's there and it's open and it's a running up fight before Tyson Fury, why not? Now we get to find out how much or how not much Jake Paul really wants that fight. Would it be possible for another to jump the now mind-boggling queue of hopefuls in line for a cash cow like Jake Paul? As mentioned, Usyk doesn't have an obvious next move, and would you look at that? Guess who was front and center at Wembley on Saturday to stare down the new undisputed heavyweight champion? You have to give Paul credit for one thing. He doesn't bother aiming low. Still, Joshua versus Paul seems a more likely pairing, and at any rate, is further down the road towards reality, even if it comes off as something far closer to reality TV when keeping it real goes wrong. You mean when pretending to be a boxer goes wrong? It probably breaks the internet, Hearn said. It breaks the platform. It probably delivers the biggest numbers of any fight we've ever seen. And that's the crazy world we live in. For me, I don't expect it to be competitive. But do you want to see Jake Paul get flattened? There you go. It's on a plate right in front of you. That's a big part of the reason I think Turkey decided to get involved, because that is what Turkey wants to see. He wants to see Jake Paul get flattened. Is Eddie Hearn overselling it? Does this fight have the potential to be a big fight, one of the biggest fights, big enough to break the platform, break the internet? Believe it or not, he's right. Between Anthony Joshua's organic following that he built up over time from the amateurs into the pros, and Jake Paul being a social media influencer, remember that these are two of the highest paid people in boxing right now, Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, and they both bring to the table their respective audiences that are very different in terms of demo, but still two very big audiences. And that's just their fans. Tack on the added appeal of the people who don't like Jake Paul. Maybe they're not crazy about Anthony Joshua, but they like Jake Paul even less. And the idea that they might get to see somebody knock him out, that will bring them to the table too. And that was the latest from Eddie Hearn. But the latest when it comes to Jake Paul is he wants a guaranteed $40 million to take on the fight. There it is. Now, he doesn't need $40 million up front to fight a Tyrone Woodley or an over-the-hill Anderson Silva, a Ben Askren. He doesn't need $40 million up front to fight an over-the-hill Julio Cesar Chavez. But when Anthony Joshua's involved, oh, now you need $40 million. Maybe it's because this guy is not as old as those guys, and this fight, there is a strong possibility that Anthony could make this your final fight, your final boxing match. You're not going to want to dabble in boxing if this actually goes through, but I don't expect it to, and I never did. Even before Jake Paul's $40 million demand. I never thought this was gonna happen. I never thought that Jake Paul would actually do it, and now it would seem that he's found a way out. Ask for a dollar amount you don't expect anyone to give you, so the fight doesn't happen. Simple. In the past, there have been questions about the legitimacy of these contests that Jake Paul has been putting on, whether or not they're actually contests or are they fixed. I don't know. All I do know is that this is one fight that he wouldn't be able to fix. You wouldn't be facing a guy who's over the hill and past it, strapped for cash, looking to make a few bucks. Anthony's got plenty of money. He's got more money than you. If he takes this fight on, it's only so he can knock you out. That's it. That's the appeal. And you don't want that.